Hello, and welcome to another episode of Automate Office Work. Today's episode is Automating Legal with Sare Brownhill. So we have a guest today. Sare, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you ever so much for inviting me to come on today. I've been really excited about it. So my name's Sare Brownhill. I'm a qualified legal executive. I was in practice for about 22, 23 years. And at the sort of back end of 2023, made the pivot into tech. So I now work for a company called FinLegal. We offer solutions for claims firms and claims management firms, both in the UK, the US, and Australia and Europe, to help them maximize essentially the ability to deal with lots of claimants and all other things that we can automate to make lawyers' lives easier. So a bit of a problem solver for lawyers now, rather than a lawyer, like a practicing lawyer myself.
Wow. So how did you get into it yourself? Was it an immediate thing, or was this kind of an evolution over those 23 years? You just finally came to a realization like, I don't want to do this.
Pretty much came to a realization that I couldn't keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result. Kind of what's the definition of insanity, isn't it? And I think what happened was I could see the same things happening time and time again. You know, law firms have to work in volume. In order to work in volume, if you have no automation, no AI capability, it costs a fortune. In my last law firm, I had well over 125 members of staff. A large quantity of those were in kind of intake and engagement processes for claimants. And I just thought there's got to be a better way of doing this. There's got to be a better way of getting lawyers back to being lawyers. I felt very sort of strongly that when I started in law, I was doing a lot of law and I was doing a lot of shadowing lawyers. I felt like when people were working in volume litigation, they were administrators, and it was such a waste of their skill set. And I just thought,
they wanted to do the job.
Yeah, absolutely. And and people would say to me, I want to be partner in 5 years' time. And I thought, they've not even, not doing any of the fundamental parts of law here, not through any fault of their own, just because how can you possibly do that when you're servicing hundreds of thousands of clients, all of whom are ringing up and asking you exactly the same questions as the one before and the one before that? So then I met Steve Shin, who's our CEO, had a conversation with him, loved what he had built for the Dieselgate sort of NOx solution for some of the big law firms here in the UK. And obviously thought, do you know what, this could be a really great match here. I can bring all of my knowledge of what's happening in industry, my network of people that I know in big law firms and sort of small to medium law firms as well, and kind of can build solutions to help them not have to have an army of people to do the work, really.
Nice. So who are your main clients then? The same kind of law firms that you served, or are you looking at like the smaller law firms that don't really have the bandwidth for a staff person, a support staff?
A bit of both, really. We have some really large clients, people like Lee Day, Harkers Parker, in the UK, just to mention a couple of kind of really well-known ones. I think what we're very keen to do, and what I'm very keen to do, is to kind of really bring this to the masses of the firms that simply cannot afford to kind of invest millions and millions of pounds in tech, and actually don't need to, because if there are software as a solution, they don't need to do that. They don't need. And I think that's the biggest fear, isn't it, that lawyers and especially law firms and decision makers in law firms they hear the word tech, they think it's going to cost millions of pounds to implement. I hear but we've always done it this way. I used to say it myself, but we've always done it this way. We can moan about case management systems not being automated enough, et cetera, but actually, it's in the long run, it's so significantly cheaper to have a solution to the problem than try and fix the problems from within, because it's incredibly expensive, quite rightly. People who are very, very good at tech and building tech from the ground up, it can be very expensive to have that in-house, and you don't need to.
Yes. Yeah. And so is it your perspective then that before bringing in the tech, there's really like an analysis of the processes, the workflows that needs to be done?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
we improve those processes first, and then we bring in the technology
exactly.
kind of as a second.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly that. What I tend to do is I tend to go into law firms, have a chat with them about their work type, whatever it may be. It might be PI, it might be motor vehicle finance claims here in the UK at the moment are pretty big. Have a look at what's the best way of solutionizing those problems. And the vast majority of times, Justin, as you will know, it's client onboarding and client engagement. Like that's just, as I sort of say from my sort of past experiences, it's so hard to update. You want to be able to update people because that keeps them engaged. But the issue I think we have is that it can be really difficult on these legacy tenanted case management systems to do that. In order to have done that in my last firm, I would have had to export it to a CSV, do a mail merge overnight, run a routine. So everything was out of date because it wasn't sort of immediate. Whereas obviously sort of solutions such as ours, it's as easy to talk to one person as it is to talk up to 100,000 people if you want to by the touch of a button. And that's how it has to be, because people want engagement. Because if you don't have engagement, you've got this funnel of clients that come in at the top end. It's great. Lots of firms have got intake teams that are pretty good at, retaining clients. But what happens when you need to distribute money at the other end, when you've not spoken to them properly for 2.5 years? They've fallen off the radar. So I think absolutely go in, discuss the workflows, make them slick, and then embrace the tech that will allow you to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've noticed as a customer, because we are consumers in our daily lives beyond just our professional lives. Whenever we engage with another company, they usually make it very, very easy. There's multiple ways you can engage a company. Say like I want to order, I don't know, a pizza. I can go on an app and just do it. Or I can call and talk to a person. Or I can go to a physical location and talk to somebody. But the experience is going to be basically the same. It's the same menu. It's the same conversation that we go through.
Yeah.
And I could see this with law firms, just streamline it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're I don't think people realize how much tech kind of they use in everyday life. Like you say, if I want to book a flight on Ryanair, I can do that on an app. I can ring them up, go on their website, or I want to ask a question on FAQ on a website. The vast majority of that's bots nowadays. Let's be honest, it's chatbots. And I think I think law firms have got to kind of embrace the fact that that's life for for the vast majority of us. That's life. As long as you make it, as long as there's an element of human touch. And I don't think anybody is suggesting in law that there shouldn't be, because I think there's absolute need for that. The bits that don't need the human touch are all of the chasing parts, all of the signing of documents. And I think, like you say, I think we've got instant gratification, haven't we? If I want to order something, I'm going to go on Amazon Prime, frankly, and I'm going to go and do it because it will be delivered tomorrow. We want instant access to what we want. That's just the human nature of now. If I want to watch everything on Netflix, I don't have to wait bi-weekly anymore. I can do it all I can binge watch it in a night. And I think that's the same with how people will now engage with law firms. They essentially want an instant response. Now, how do you do that unless you've got people working 24/7, 365 days of the year? You can't do that. It's so expensive. So what you have to do is embrace the tech that will do it for you.
This is interesting. I could imagine a scenario where I want to be updated by my lawyer every so often. I don't know if it's every day, every 2 weeks, once a month, but I want to be updated in my way. Maybe I want to have like a newsletter or something that tells me the progress on all of my different matters. Or maybe I do want to go ask somebody a specific question about a specific matter. But it was just sending a random email to some random like maybe I don't even know which lawyer is working on my matter. So it has to go to a secretary who then has to distribute it to the different people and get the answers.
Yeah, and it would be 3 days later because somebody would go, "Oh gosh, I've not got back to Mr. So and so," and then by the time that's happened, the question that you want an answer to, well, you're either gonna, in the very best case scenario, you're going to be a bit disenchanted with your law firm. The worst case scenario is you're going to take your business elsewhere. And this is a very, there's plenty of lawyers out there who will gobble up the cases that people don't actively engage with. And you're absolutely right. You want to be able to go, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, I've come off shift because I don't work Monday to Friday 9 to 5. What's happening with my X case, Y case? Well, you want to be able to log on and see that. You want to have like some sort of actual engagement to go, oh, that's what's happening with that case. Oh, crikey, I forgot to sign X, Y, and Z. Or the system's now telling me that I need to provide an ID document or something like that. And I think those are the things that the end user, the claimant wants, because why shouldn't they? That's like you say, it's very much life nowadays. And equally, I don't want to have to employ, if I've got a law firm, 50 people working around the clock to chase Mr. Bloggs for his, signed documentation or his photographs of his accident site, because I don't know when he works, and and all of those things. And I when I was working in personal injury, for instance, I used to find that was a terrible, terrible hurdle to try and overcome. Is that I worked Monday to Friday, and I was quite happy to do the out of hours stuff, etc. as well. But probably about 60 to 70% of my clients work shift work. They were postmen, or they worked in factories. So when I was at work, they weren't at work, and vice versa. So then we were like passing ships all the time, but we had no tech to be able to pick up the slack in between, to just deal with it when I wasn't there, but they were.
Wow. That is such an interesting scenario, them sending photos of an accident somewhere. Like, you could really turn that into an app.
Yeah, absolutely. There's portal, we're really keen on the portal side. I'm very keen on doing that for PI because I think it's very, very necessary. I think just kind of exactly the scenario I just described. There's a lot of data, a lot of documentation that has to come backwards and forwards to those claims, quite frankly, and it should do, because that's how it should be. But also there's a heavy reliance on your client giving it to you, and human beings are rubbish, as we know, most of the time, without being prompted to do something. But I don't want to have to prompt them 3 or 4 times.
You could have auto reminders to them.
Exactly. So
and then if it's been a couple of weeks, then it gets escalated to you,
and then it goes through. Absolutely. You do the whole thing of, you can do the reminders. I don't know, you do it every 3 days for 5 weeks. And then all of a sudden it falls into a little siphon elsewhere where maybe human eyes then do have to have a look at it. Where has this
them? When do you expect to have this done? And then if it's after, then we start following up.
Yeah, exactly. And I think all of those things are those things are very important, because it's the biggest headache as a lawyer. I'm doing any form of work, to be fair. And I did sort of 20 odd years doing PI, but then after that, I went into consumer Consumer Credit Act litigation. So I was doing mis-selling, calling it in its kind of roundest terms. And that was even worse, because although I didn't need anything from the claimants, particularly in terms of evidence, I had 96,000 of them. So, within the firm, so that then becomes not so much a matter of dealing with document exchange and request. It became a lot more about the same questions being asked all the time. So, I'm really keen on and have done build sort of FAQ videos. I found that FAQ written format, and every website loves an FAQ section, but I found that if you did it in written format, people were really not very keen to engage with it. It's that whole thing of, well, if I've got to go and read something and it's going to take me 5 minutes, don't do it. But what I did find is that everybody's kind of moved to this like YouTube generation, that if you want to know how to do something, you're going to want to watch a video of how it's done. Like, literally, that's it. People love that. Absolutely anything, whether it's a hobby or you're going to go and fix your car. And actually found that therefore the video content that's produced leads to much less traffic coming into the law firm dealing with 3 people, all who want to know what the CFA retainer says, what do deductions from damages mean, when will I get paid, kind of all of those things. So so that's really helped, and I think that's really important. And actually the end users, the claimants, the clients at the end seem to really like that.
Yeah, I can imagine you have all different kinds of claimants that are just normal people. Maybe they're not used to reading so much in their daily life.
Yeah, you know what it's like. Us lawyers love to send out bumps of information that big and go, did you make sure, did you make sure you'd read all the way through? Yeah, and people want plain English explainers, quite rightly so. There's no other area. And I always say this, when you go and have an operation, yeah, you get all of the technical terms of what it's called, etc., etc. But then the doctor comes in and they kind of explain to you what they're going to do, and they explain it to you as if you're daft, really. But that's fine. And there's no other industry in the world other than law that just, keeps popping a bit of Latin in there, just throwing a bit of, old school sort of English language, etc., in there, and expect people to understand what we're talking about. And so I think plain English explainers, really setting the expectations of what's going to happen and when, so important. And it's that engagement piece again. If you feel engaged and listened to, as a claimant, as an end user, then you'll go back to that law firm again, and you'll use them. So it's like, it's that longevity of relationships, really.
I think the legal industry historically has been like this mysterious black box where you get to engage very much with your lawyer. You just go and you tell them to start working. They do whatever. You have no idea what they're doing, and you don't know when it will be done, and you'll just get a bill later. And I think people are changing. They have different expectations now.
Absolutely, they do, and quite rightly. I think yeah. I think lawyers, and I can say this because I am one. Very important. It's very important, and like, other people don't need to understand it. We'll just do it, and we'll deliver it at the end. And aren't we really, really clever? And aren't we really, really great? And I think the industry has to move away from that. Has to move away from being this enigma in the corner that nobody can understand. It's quite rightly all about engaging people, keeping them invested in the process. Because frankly, if you don't keep people invested in the process, especially if you're dealing in litigation, when you're expecting them potentially to turn up at trial, you're not going to have they're not going to come sort of fully prepped, and you're not going to be able to turn that around. So yeah, we all understand lawyers need to make money, and that's the aim of the game. And there's no beating around the bush on that. They make money from from sort of litigation and running these claims. But that's not to say that people shouldn't be coming along for the journey and fully engaged in the process.
You're touching on a subject a little bit of the billable hour, and I'm not as familiar with litigation. I don't know if you depend so much on how much time you spend versus actually completing an action and winning a case. Do you see in your area that there's a little bit of hesitancy for people to find these efficiencies because it brings down the amount of time that they can bill?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the billable hour. It gets thrown around all the time. And, it was the absolute bane of my life when I was a practicing lawyer. It was one of those things that it's almost a bit of an oxymoron, really. It doesn't really fit with producing a really fluid client experience, because what it says is, unless I spent a lot of time on your case, I haven't worked very hard, because that's what it looks like in sort of plain English to people, is that, well, my lawyer is really great because they spent 20 hours on my case, whereas actually my lawyer got me the same result, but they spent 5 hours on it. Which is the best? Well, it depends, really, isn't it, which way you look at it? Because if you got the same result and it cost you less, then simply it's absolutely going to be lawyer number 2. But I do think there is the hesitancy from law firms to adopt processes that wipe out billable hour, and I just don't think it's necessary. I think actually what you do, and what some law firms in the UK have been very, very good at explaining, is they've embraced technology. Yes, it has reduced the amount of time that cases have taken to resolve, but it's just meant that they've done 3 times as many cases. So nobody's working any less. It's what it's done is actually open doors to more work, because the work's taking them less time to complete because of the efficiencies of tech. And I think that's the antidote to the we can't get rid of the billable hour.
They can then serve more of the public that needs legal services.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly, because it's not taking them as long. And I think that's going to be very important in things like personal injury in the UK, because personal injury in the UK, although it doesn't have a billable hour until sort of a certain level of quantum of value of injuries, it's fixed fee. It's even more of an issue is that you still get a huge amount of people who are involved in road traffic accidents, for instance, and they're not quite, thankfully, they're not really seriously injured, but they are injured enough to be, to be eligible for compensation, potentially a little bit of time off work, etc., etc. But what has happened in the UK is it's become really hard to serve those people. So the MOJ will kind of say, well, they can do it themselves if they want to. It's like anything; it's still a legal service that needs to be provided. But it's very, very difficult then to make the money which law firms have to make, because it's a business, and it's not a dirty word to make profit for it, as a business. It's just, you've just got to be open and transparent about it. But yeah, the tech side for fast track personal injury litigation in the UK is the opportunity is incredible there, and it's something that I'm really keen, and we're really keen to explore and to build a solution for, because you then want all of your focus as a law firm to be right at that back end where human eyes are needed. There's no doubt about that, and nobody's suggesting for 1 minute that human touch and human decision making should be forgone, because all of that front end will be dealt with by kind of, dare I say the words, agentic AI, I think, in the future. And it's a term that gets spoken about quite regularly at the moment, but it's something that I'm very excited about. I think agentic AI is incredibly incredibly game changing, I think, for lawyers.
Do you want to tell us some more about that?
Yeah, so I think AI agents that sort of complement lawyers. So when I think people talk about AI, and I talk to lawyers all the time, you have this, either they go, yeah, fantastic, or they look like they're going to be physically sick. Because I think people hear AI, they think robots, they think decision making, and they think going to take over my job. That you and I will see it all the time, I'm sure. But people who kind of go, don't need a contract lawyer anymore because I've stuck it into Chat GPT or something like that, and and all of that. And yeah, you've done that. I do that as a lawyer as well. But
you get even more work on the back end.
Exactly. Yeah. It's only as good as the information you feed it, and that kind of thing. But I think I do think AI has an absolute place in the industry. And I think it's going to be very, very interesting to be able to use it to complement decision making made by lawyers. So things like it being able to read documents, and it be able to take those documents and work out whether or not perhaps it's an admission of liability or a denial of liability, and then place those cases kind of into siphons, into pots, so that human eyes then go and have a look at the pots, and they're going to go away and they're going to go, well, I'm looking at all the admissions of liability here today, and but not have to open the post up, attach it to the case, read through with human eyes. And people do talk to me quite a lot about, will there be errors? I think there's always going to be errors in any form of automation and AI, and anybody who tells you that there isn't is I think probably telling a bit of a fib, to be honest. I do, however, having had a huge number of humans dealing with things, the human error, not because of anything other than people are humans, and that everybody makes mistakes. That's why there's rubbers on the ends of pencils, is because they will make more errors. They will misread something. They will misconstrue the context. Something will get attached to the wrong file because it was, a wrong digit was put in on a reference number or something like that. And I think actually that's more of a risk, having to have a huge number of people all of whom can answer the phone and say something slightly different than the person sat next to them and slightly different to the person sat opposite them. And I do think a lot of people like myself have left the profession, that they're coming out of being practicing lawyers, which means that junior lawyers are a little bit on their own. You know, they haven't got as many experienced lawyers sat around them. You know, and we all learned by osmosis back in the day. Oh, you know, next time I'm on the phone, I'm going to say that. And I think they've lost a lot of that, and I think that's more of a risk, I think, than the perceived risk of AI and the perceived risk of automation.
Mm.
Yeah.
I'm hearing that the bigger problem is a problem of systems, that the systems don't give the guardrails, whether it's a human doing it or a computer doing it. But like, I work with processes and systems. Why don't we just set up the guardrails? So like, instead of you just sending me some random document where then I have to have an AI that reads it, why don't I send you some kind of a form that asks for like the elements of your injury? And then we know we have the exact elements because you have to go pick them.
Exactly. You've got to go in and you've got to answer the questions. It's not going to have to go there and go, what's that handwriting? Was it left leg? Was it right leg injury? You know, it doesn't. Yeah, I totally agree. I think anything where you can build a kind of process, an internal form process where you're asking for specific information and people are choosing to provide it with you, I think that's really, really important. I really, really do. I think the unfortunate nature of it is that there are some really there are a lot of legacy case management solutions, case management programs that have absolutely served a purpose, a really, you know, a really great purpose for many, many years, but they've not futuritized at all. And so we're finding that there's a lot of law firms especially in the UK, that are really going to come up against this problem in the next couple of years, where their legacy case management program has got no automation. It's got, you know, it's got no AI capability if you require it. It's all very human led because it's not had any future, you know, there's been no futurification of it at all. And what do you do then? Well, the issue, you know, because that whole we've always done it this way, that we get thrown back at us as lawyers, or lawyers tend to say to us, is going to be a problem. And I think that's why software as a solution is such a solution, because you're not asking, you know, partners of law firms to throw in the bin something they've done for 20 years. You're just going, do you know what, this can really complement what you do, and it can it takes you from being able to do what you do now to being able to keep up with the law firms who perhaps have got a director of AI and 20 data scientists and things like that, because there will be law firms like that. You know, there will be law firms that have adopted it and are doing it in-house, as have I. Yeah, and they are doing it, and they're doing it very, very well, and I'm absolutely kudos to them all. But that means that they'll have the sort of the firms that sort of step below that the small to medium law firms will really struggle to keep up. And I speak to them quite often where they'll kind of go, well, we can't compete with the likes of X, Y, and Z law because they've got, you know, they've spent millions. They don't need to. They absolutely don't need to. What they do is they just need to adopt the work that's being done by other people to solve the issue. So, and I think that there's a real calling for software to do that, and, you know, software to be the bridging of the gap, because there'll be a huge gap otherwise.
Do you see a split in the legal industry that will happen? Kind of like we've seen with, say, like the manufacturing of cars. Cars used to all be handmade. It took a year to make them, and then Ford made the factory line. And now most of us are happy with just a standard car. It's much cheaper. You don't have much choice. It's good enough. But then there are still people who value the handcrafted car, and they go buy the Lamborghini, and it's more of like a status symbol now. So in the same way, could law firms split along that?
I think it absolutely could. I think they absolutely could. And I think I'm really keen to make that a much harder thing for those, you know, for the ones that are doing it in house. As in, yeah, I want other law firms to have the benefit of some of the tech that they are, you know, that they're building but not productizing in house, because then it does level the playing field for access to justice. And I think that's incredibly important, because justice and access to justice can be really expensive. You're either going to have to pay up front or pay at the back end in terms of the billable hour, or you've got to give away a percentage of, you know, on a contingent basis of what you're awarded. So absolutely, you should have freedom of choice to go, you know, you might want to go down the road because it's dead easy for you to kind of bump into your lawyer if you want to, or you might want to go with one of the big firms. But what should happen is that the way that you are able to engage with your law firm should be pretty similar along, you know, pretty similar along the way. With there'll be nuances to that, of course, depending on the type of law. But I think otherwise we do really run the risk of the really big players having a really big slice of that pie, and therefore that would impact negatively, I think, on access to justice for the kind of the end users, the claimants, the clients at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do think most people will be just fine with a standard litigation or a standard contract, because it's good enough. All I need is average. But then there will still be some people that are like your more wealthy people. Maybe they need legal services around like managing wealth or something that's much more niche, and where they really want to have an expert on it. They don't want to just trust the machines. They say, I value this. And plus they get to say, I used a human lawyer. Look at me.
Yeah, I think there'll be that. I think the vast majority of people, myself included, do you know what? I might want to have a conversation. I've got a bit of law, you know, going on, whether it's buying a house, conveyancing, whether it be, you know, PI and stuff like that. I might want to talk to my lawyer every now and again. But actually, do many people really talk on the phone very much anymore? No. You know, I want to be able to might want to drop them a bit of a line on the kind of chat bot and see whether or not, you know, or ask for, go online and have a look where my case is as a case status. But actually, I think very few people kind of want or have got the time for the constant sort of back and forth that you can have in law over the phone. You know, what they want is, you know, they've been injured, for instance, they've had an accident at work. That's rubbish. It's an awful part of somebody's life. They want to know that somebody's dealing with that. They're going to get them the best settlement that they can possibly get them, and then they're going to get some money at the end of it, and hopefully a bit of treatment, and things will go back to normal. That's what they want. It's transactional law in sort of in lots of ways. Yeah. So I think there's some really exciting times ahead. I really do. I think there's some really great things that are obviously being done, in a number of law firms, and a number of issues with client engagement. I think client engagement has really come back to the fore. I think a lot of people kind of stepped away from it. They'll say they didn't, but a lot of law firms were kind of like, it's a volume game. It doesn't really matter. Like, we'll update them when we update them and it'll be fine. And actually have then come a bit of a cropper when they realize that if you don't keep people engaged throughout the process and they're not bought into being part of that process, you get to the end and it's just a bit of a disaster, really. And I think, that's happened a few times with a few law firms, and now actually client engagement and holding a client's hand through a process doesn't physically mean holding their hand through a process anymore. So it just means having some visibility and some function for them to be able to contact you and speak to you.
I could also see some customers wanting to manage the level of engagement that they would like to have. Yeah. Maybe some of them just say, yeah, I want you to go take care of it. Let me know if there's something huge you need from me. And then the other ones might say, I want to be updated on every little thing. Yeah. It's different. People are different.
Yeah, absolutely. Some people all want that 28-day update, whether there's been an update or not. They just literally want to feel like their name is kind of on your lips a little bit. And, and then, like you say, then there'll be those people who have been quite seriously injured who really do want that and need that, that human touch. And then there'll be the people that just go, do you know what? And I think this is really the difference between the kind of the volume litigation side that we're dealing with sort of the GLO kind of side, the cases, the group litigation orders for like things like NOx, etc., the emissions cases, where clients are engaged, but they're not engaged to the desire of wanting to know absolutely everything, because they know it's going to take a long time. And actually, it's money that they didn't think they were going to get. So they're now going to, they're going to wait for the settlement check. They're going to wait for somebody to say, you're going to get this amount of money. Whereas the PI clients are the ones who are much more likely, they've been injured. It's awful. You know, you're meeting people at the kind of the worst times of their lives. And so they might want to be engaged. Like, you know, they want to have a bit more contact with you, because you might be the monies that you get for them might be the difference between them being able to go back to work or getting their car repaired or some physiotherapy or medical treatment. And that then has a much more handheld feel to it. And that's why I think it's very important to have something that isn't Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. It's all the time, so that they have that ability to engage with you kind of throughout.
And what are the things that you see in the future?
I think law firms will adopt and engage with tech, because I think they will have to. I think regulatory and compliance will be, it's pretty hot in the UK, just because of our regulation with the Solicitors Regulation Authority. And I know for a period of time the SRA were really nervous about AI decision making, as in sort of being able to look through stuff and go, this, yes, yay or nay. And I think it's absolutely right to flag that as an issue. But what I think will happen is that AI will be used in a way that complements what lawyers do. So it might go, I'm saying yay, and I'm going to put it over here for you to have a look and say whether or not you agree. Or I'm going to give it a rating out of 10. And 10's like, I guarantee I think this is brilliant. But a 5, that's going to need somebody with some human eyes to go and have a look, and to then, and then to take that out. So anything that's administrative, all of the chasing formats, all of the grabbing signatures and things like that, it absolutely has to move to tech, because I think if it's not moved to tech, I think those law firms will, unfortunately, it's a really difficult industry. It's a really difficult industry to make money in now. It used to be, it's always been difficult, and I did it when it was arguably easier to make money, before fixed fees and cost reductions came in. But it's really hard to make, to make money on it now, that the margins are really, really small. Quite rightly, employing people has got quite expensive. And I'm not about to sort of knock that, just in absolutely, life is expensive. So frankly, people being paid, a wage to be able to live. And obviously in the UK, that's set by law as a minimum level. Absolutely. But that then becomes a real burden again on law firms and on employers. Employment law is about to change. It makes it sort of more difficult if you make a wrong hire to not have that person in your business, and to perhaps part ways. All of these things can be solved by technology, because actually, and there's nobody who goes to law school here, America, anywhere, spend tens and tens of thousands of pounds or dollars on being qualified, who wants to sit on the phone chasing up a medical report or asking somebody to make sure they're going to sign the retainer documents. It's as simple as that. They don't want to do that. They want to do law. They want to feel like they're getting results. And you don't get that by being a kind of in an administrative role. And I think we're doing young lawyers a disservice by expecting them to leave university with huge amounts of debt, to go walk into law firms where that's their main role, where all day, every day, they will chase and they will do things that arguably, well, not arguably, absolutely can be done by technology right now. Right now.
I'm imagining a future where there is so much data that's collected, not just in the legal industry, but let's say these people are driving a very smart car that also has tons of data. So you could collect all of that data and already know who is at fault, kind of,
Yeah, Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. I mean, what do we do, especially kind of with that, with with electric cars and all the rest. I mean, our cars anymore. I was in an argument the other day. They're almost glorified computers. The computers and wheels, like they're literally either that or they're like going to the fair and being on Dodgems. You press go and it goes. You tell it to go backwards, it goes backwards. It's as simple as that. There's no engine anymore, is there? So you're absolutely right. And I think my car will tell me where it is, whether it's unlocked, whether it does this, and most cars will do that now. And I think that's just a tiny snippet of information. And I'm not sure if this happens where you are, but our young people have to have black boxes fitted for insurance, and that can tell you how fast you accelerated and how fast you brake and how quickly you were traveling, what time of the day you were traveling. So data's being collected. It's just not being collected and then used. But you're absolutely right, it's likely to be used in the future.
My family uses an app so we can see the location of everybody, and it also keeps track of the speed that they're going, and it will notifications to me when my children are in a car going too fast.
100%. I do exactly the same with mine. I've got 4 children, but my two youngest are younger, and I can tell. It'd be a bit unfair for me to sort of track where my eldest 2 are at university, but the younger 2, I don't think they like that, but the younger 2 I do, because you're absolutely right, and then it will come up and it will tell me when they're in a car. It'll tell me when they're riding a bike at the park. It's crazy. But so yeah, like you say, data is being collected.
Mm-hmm. There's also maybe a darker side for consumers, that this data is being collected and it's probably being sold to the insurance companies.
Yeah. I mean, which is going to be a hurdle, I think, for consumers to overcome. I mean, they're probably, when we sign up for these apps, in fact, I've no doubt about it, we're consenting to that data being held somewhere and being used, and it try to sell you stuff off the back of data that it gets. But I think things like road traffic accidents have a real potential to be complemented by some of the documentation that's held in vehicles, and things like that. It already happens in the UK for things like for accidents involving trucks, etc., and lorries, because they have charts in them that tell you all of those bits that we've just been speaking about. So it's going to come, isn't it? And then it's about how that's used, and how that's deciphered by both parties. Will there still be an argument about what the data says? I'm sure there will be. Then that will be for claimant lawyers versus insurance companies and defendant lawyers to argue over. But data will be there. So
it can only increase the amount of work.
Yeah, I think absolutely so. Absolutely so.
Okay. So your thesis, if I might say, is that this is happening to the legal industry. Lawyers go along with it. They need to be a part of it to be prepared for the future. Anything else that I missed?
No, I think that's it, really. I think that lawyers don't need to be. I think lawyers need to embrace it, but I think they just also don't need to be frightened of it. I think that what I've seen and what we're trying to do, and other people are trying to do as well, is not to make vast redundancies in the legal field. We're trying to make lawyers' lives significantly easier. They've all got to make money. They've got a billable cost hour target. They've also got an actual cost target. We want to make it easier for them to do that. And you do that by embracing some of the tech that frees them up to do all of the back end stuff, the settlement, the stuff that everybody wants to do. Everybody wants to get up in the morning and get those results for their clients. And I think this is where it needs to be embraced.
And I am seeing a slight difference. You're just describing lawyers and what they would like to do. I've noticed, though, that you are no longer doing the purely legal work. You have gone off. You have pivoted toward technology. And so can you talk a little bit about, because I'm imagining that other people might be inspired by this story and they would say, I would like to branch off as well. They might not be in the legal industry, but they might say, yes, I see technology is very important. We need to go in this direction. I want to be a part of that. Yeah. And it looks like you, Sare, are being a part of that.
Yes,
So
absolutely. And it's something I absolutely love. It's something that if you'd probably asked me 3 years ago, I couldn't have foreseen. I thought I was going to go out of a law firm in in a cardboard box. Genuinely, I thought I was going to work and work and work until I could work no more. And I think there was, I just really got to a point where I thought, I've got a skill set. I would like to say I'm a good lawyer, and I think I am. But that I'd kind of got to the point whereby unless there was technology to free up some of the things that I was doing and my law firm were doing and the people that worked for me were doing, I couldn't give any more and make it any better. So there was, I could go and do it again somewhere else, and I could start again somewhere else and do it. But if there wasn't the technology to allow me to free up some of the time that was being, and I don't use the term loosely, but pretty much wasted on on admin, etc.
on value added.
Exactly. What I couldn't do was make junior lawyers better through no fault of their own. And then I was really fearful that we weren't going to get that next level of lawyers 5 years time, 10 years time, 15 years time, and what were we doing for them? Whereas I would be really confident now that if people were embracing technology, that those junior lawyers would be getting access to proper training from more senior lawyers. They would be able to see more legal transactions happen and all of the stuff that comes along with that. And I therefore took a real step back, and I thought, do I go back and do the same thing again? And I'd service lots of clients and have a team of people and managers below me and etc. Or do I use the skill set, knowing what I know quite intimately about the industry, and go, because I'm not a technologist, I'm not a developer. I couldn't go and make you the solution. I have a fantastic team around me who do that. But what I do know is what the problems are and how to fix them. So what I now do is I kind of sell the dream of solving the issues to lawyers. And I think that's a really good use of my skill set now. I cut my teeth for 2 decades, kind of slogging through day-to-day transactional law, and have now gone, I am better used so that other people who are still in the trenches of doing it get the better results.
Nice. I think that's such an inspiring story. I can imagine that there are a lot of people in the same situation, that they have become experts in their field, and they see the need for this field to be combined with technology. They don't have to have technology expertise. Their expertise in their field is good enough. And you just have to find the companies, the developers that are working on this, and you can add your value to them, and then they can go do it.
Absolutely. And I've been very, very fortunate that I met Steve, who runs the firm that I work for, and the team around me that do that. That they like the fact that they can wheel out the lawyer for the lawyers, and then I can fill in the blanks, and we build a better product for as a result of it. I'm absolutely sure of that. But I'm very, very fortunate to be surrounded by some great people.
Nice. All right. What is the name of your company, and do you have a website or something?
We do, yeah. So it's Fin Legal, and if anybody goes on to my LinkedIn, the page is on there, but it's finlegal.io if you want to have a look on there, and it's got there's some demos, etc., of what we do and what we're going to do in the future.
All right. And your name again?
My name's Sare Brownhill. I'm head of legal.
Okay. And for the people who are listening only, how do you spell your name, Sare?
It's S-A-R-E.
Sare Brownhill. And
That's
you can
right.
find her on LinkedIn.
You can indeed. Thank you ever so much.
All right. Do you anything to say wrapping up?
No, I think we've covered it all. It's been absolutely great to speak to you. It's really great to speak to to speak about it. Really, it's interesting times. I think the law firms and legal generally has taken a while to get there, but I think I'm seeing some real traction in people embracing technology, and that's really exciting. I think it's great. I think that's where we all need to be, and I'm really excited for the next few years to see how this develops.
Oh, good. Yeah, I've noticed that we've had our challenges. especially legal technology the last couple of decades has been making promises to people that are kind of too much, and maybe there is some hype around it even today, but eventually we will get there. We need to prepare. The future will come eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll just drag them kicking and screaming into the future, but I don't think that's a bad thing. But, you know, there's people in the industries now who are really, who are, like you said, they're not over-promising. They're not saying that, you know, the world's going to be completely solved overnight. What we're doing is complementing what people do every day. And we're not taking anything away from the fact that lawyers, and again, I can say it because I am one, are great. But we, you know, we all need to embrace technology because that's the way of the world.
All right. And it sounds like there's a community of people that are involved in these kinds of things. Have you found things like conferences and networking ways to find other people that are all engaged in this? Because it takes all of us.
It does. It does. I love it. I love a good conference. I love a good technology conference and a legal conference. So mainly, most of them come up sort of from about sort of May onwards. You know, for the ones that I do, I like talking. I quite often speak at conferences, a little bit like you and I are doing now, but mainly about sort of very specific topics about sort of client engagement and things like that. But I think it's absolutely right. What I have noticed, certainly over the last 6 to 12 months, is a lot more people listening. I think when I spoke about technology, it kind of was like a yeah, we all know it's coming, and like it was very much like a very flippant. Whereas now people are going, need to listen, need to understand, and understand that it is coming, and that's no bad thing. It's nothing but a good thing, because it's going to solve lots and lots of issues. And actually, when I show some people some of the solutions, I get kind of wide eyes of, oh my goodness, you know, that would be great. Like, can it do that? You know, it can do that in real time, all of those kind of things. And I think it's one of those things that until people kind of see what it can do and understand, you know, get that click in their head where they go, gosh, if it did that for this case and it can do that for, you know, the other 200 that are in my caseload, then I've just saved myself a day a week, you know, where I'm filtering through my emails and chasing, you know, saying to every client, you will get, it will be, you know, all of those things. And if it's done all of that for you, the amount of time that frees you up to look at that case or look at those cases that give you a headache and keep you up at 3 o'clock in the morning because there's some complex legal matter in there, because that's where the attention needs to be, not the...
I see that's the goal. The goal isn't to get rid of all of your work. It's to get rid of the work that you don't need to do. So then you can focus on the work where you can really give value. And then you actually have time to do it. Yeah,
absolutely. It is absolutely that. And we all want time back in the day. And lawyers are no different than that. And there is only so many hours in the day. And I think I think lawyers have always done that thing where they're like, I work 17 hours a day, and that's just not healthy. And, you know, lawyer burnout is a real thing. It's an industry that's renowned for you're only working hard if you're working 60, 70-hour weeks. That's got to stop, because that's just not healthy. It's not normal. And therefore just use your time. It's not working harder, it's working smarter. that's the thing.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much. It's been an enjoyable conversation.
It has.
I hope that everyone listening is getting benefit from this, and feel free to reach out to Sare if you'd like to connect.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Justin, for inviting me. I've really enjoyed it.
All right, my pleasure. And okay, so we'll wrap up, and I just wish the audience a great day and happy automating.